Okay. All right. We are live. Yo, what's going on, guys? Membro here, back at it with another college football weekly podcast. This time we're doing it live over on YouTube. So if you are catching the replay either on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to go to the YouTube and subscribe. Membro YouTube right here. Slowly growing. And yeah, that's what we're doing kind of the live right now. But here we can put, there I am. There I am. Put the camera there. And so let's get right into it. Here are my week 8 takeaways. We got, first off, biggest takeaway has to be Oklahoma upset by Kansas. Kansas pulls off the upset. It was a crazy storm. Middle of America storm game, thunderstorm. They put the goalpost in the lake next to the stadium, and Kansas pulls off the upset. Oklahoma goes down. They take their first loss of the season. We'll kind of get into our reactions of where they're at in the rankings too. Really, honestly, just kind of a bad loss for Oklahoma. Really sets them back. And it's overall really bad for the Big 12, as we know, because now your really only two hopes are Texas and Oklahoma, and they both have one loss. You look at pretty much all the other major Power 5 conferences, they have at least one team that is undefeated. Another game with two one-loss teams, Oregon and Utah. Oregon goes to Salt Lake City, and they dominate. They dominated. Really, the Cam Rising absence, all the injuries for Utah had really just caught up to them in this game. Oregon is on point. They looked very good. Bo Nix looked very good, very accurate, was on fire the entire game. That running game to support as well with Bucky Irving, and Jordan James as well, winning him as well. Bunch of running backs there that they can utilize with that big offensive line, and that the defense held it down. You look at this Utah offense, Bryson Barnes, they really pulled through against USC. This time they were shut down by Oregon. And honestly, it makes you kind of think like, wow, this USC defense really isn't that great. Gave up 30 plus against a Utah offense that's really not that great, with a third string walk-on quarterback, Bryson Barnes, who just got a scholarship. I was praising him, which rightfully so. He deserved lots of praise last week, but overall just caught up to the Utes. And this is not one of my points, but USC barely escaped against Cal. Cal put up 49, and they really honestly bailed USC out because they went for two. It was 50-49, and they went for two and missed it. So I guess the USC defense wins on that front, but overall, really not a great look for the Trojans. To give up basically 50 against Cal, which, Cal's a pretty good team, but your USC, they had playoff aspirations. It's gone all out the window at this point for USC. Georgia silences the haters. There was a lot of question marks for Georgia, some games that were kind of shaky, and they play this Florida game and they dominate without Brock Bowers. They really showed up. Carson Beck, again, another good game. Overall, really good win in the Swamp, which Florida usually plays better in the Swamp, but Georgia shut it down from the start. They played like a number one team. Personally, I don't think they are the number one team so far this season, but they definitely played like at least a top 4 team, and you can definitely make the argument at least this week, they played like a number one team. James Madison and Air Force are still undefeated, as you see, got James Madison there. James Madison's not able to go to a bowl game, though, which is really unfortunate. So I guess our two top contenders for New Year's Six would be Air Force, which got another big win with that triple option is working for them. They're scoring with that triple option, the Air Force is. And then also Tulane, who's just got one loss. Those are pretty much the two New Year's Six bowl contenders, I guess you could say. And then Florida State and Ohio State win big again. Win big again. Florida State, they were looking a little shaky after the big week 1 win against LSU, but they have gotten it back together. They're playing teams which they should beat by a mile, and they are beating them by a mile. They're doing their job. Florida State is looking more and more like a top 4 team as the weeks go on, looking very good. So those are my week 8 key takeaways. I'll think of any others as we go on if I missed any. So let's go to my new top 10. So number 1 and number 2 and number 3 and number 4 all stay the same for me. Ohio State number 1. Overall, they are the best team in the country because of the competition that they've played, and then they go out, they get a dominating win this week. Kyle McCord, that running game, they have Travion Henderson. He is back. The defense for Ohio State has been very good. Ryan Day has definitely got his guys locked in. That last step is just going to be beating Michigan. And we know all the kind of scandals. I talked about it last week with Michigan and their scandals a little bit. We know that whole controversy. I can't wait to see. I really want these two teams to be undefeated going at each other in a pretty much a top 2 matchup in my mind, Ohio State and Michigan. So number 3 is Florida State. Florida State has got a good win against LSU, and they've been dominating in games that they should be winning. And Florida State overall has been doing very good. Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, obviously that duo. And Florida State, I think they're 8-0 for the first time since 2014. And if you remember, I believe 2014 was either the year that they went to the playoff after they won the national championship, or that year that they did win the national championship. But overall, back to those good, like Jameis Winston years, Florida State is looking very, very good. And then number 4, I have Georgia. Yeah, they look like a top 4 team definitely last week. Silenced some doubters, kind of like me. I had some doubts with Georgia, but they come in and, it feels like whenever there's a big game or Georgia's a little bit in question, Kirby Smart can get his guys going, get them riled up, and they win even without Brock Bowers, which was kind of a question of, can they even, succeed without Brock Bowers? And the offense is, does really good, doesn't miss a beat. And then number 5, I have Washington. Number 6, I have Oregon. This has been a big dialogue here. I think that right here in this ladder, I think the top 4, I think everyone can basically agree that these 4 are the top 4 right here. Then it gets a little tricky. We have some people, going out saying, hey, look, Washington has looked kind of really bad, honestly, after that Oregon win. And Oregon, on the other hand, has gotten some dominating wins. They've looked really good since. If they meet again, picking Oregon. And I'm picking Oregon if they meet again. Oregon had that game in Washington. It was a wild game in Washington. They just lost by a field goal, and Dan Lanning, going for it on 4th down 1 or 2 many times. Play him again. This Oregon team looks a lot better than this Washington team. And Washington's got a lot of big tests coming up. They got Utah, they got USC, they got Oregon State. Obviously, Oregon, too, has, I believe they have USC and Oregon State as well. So still some big tests. These are the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 by far, Washington and Oregon. And I really hope that turns out to be the Pac-12 championship game. You look at teams still really in contention for it. Probably would say just USC. They're the only other team off the top of my head. I'm just thinking off the top of my head that only has 1 conference loss. So USC is still very much, they can play spoiler here. They're still very much in that Pac-12 championship contention. Because remember, their second loss is to Notre Dame, and they just lost to Utah once. Utah's out of it. It's really a shame. You look at how good the team has been, even without all these guys that they're missing. You have to think, if they had Cam Rising, if they had Brant Cathy, if they were a little bit more healthy, this Utah team would definitely be top 10. And I think they would at least been able to make it a very close game against Oregon this last Saturday. So number 7, I have Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma dropping down. I believe last week I had them number 5, I believe. But this loss against Kansas was bad. I'm still having them over Texas because of that head-to-head. As you see, I am respecting head-to-heads here. Washington over Oregon. Oklahoma over Texas, who was over Alabama. So that's how I have this list right here. And then Penn State stays at number 10. So some honorable mentions. 1 loss Missouri, 1 loss Louisville, who just got a huge win against Duke. Shut Duke out, which was very impressive from Louisville. Then we have Air Force undefeated, James Madison undefeated, and a couple of 2-loss teams, LSU and Notre Dame. And I also forgot to put in Ole Miss. Ole Miss just with 1 loss against Alabama. Again, I'm not a huge believer in Ole Miss, but they did beat, LSU, who that offense is looking very good. It was a pretty legit team. Ole Miss still has some stuff in front of them, and then obviously Alabama can win out for contending in that SEC West title. I think that 3 main teams are Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss, which has kind of usually been the past few years. So that is my top 10. Let's go over to the new AP rankings. Let's go over the new AP rankings. No, thank you. Let's see. We got that all good to go. Let's, all right. So new AP rankings. Georgia and Missouri play each other next week. That's going to be an interesting game. Missouri has to go to Athens, it looks like, which is going to be tough. Michigan and Ohio State. Again, I think Ohio State should be above Michigan. Yes, Michigan has been dominating in their games, but Ohio State just has better. They play better teams. They played Penn State. They play Notre Dame. Who has Michigan played? But they should both handle business. Rutgers is pretty good this year. So it could be maybe an upset. I think Ohio State should be on an upset watch against Rutgers. Michigan, they should handle Purdue. Florida State, they should handle Pitt. Although, Pitt, they did beat Louisville, which is, they did beat Louisville. So watch out for that. There's a couple of upset traps here, and this is another big upset trap. Washington goes to USC this next week. USC can play some serious spoiler, and they have, they're still playing for something at least. They're playing for a Pac-12 title right now because they just have that 1 loss. Washington better get their act together because the past few games have been really shaky. They honestly should have lost to Arizona State Washington was at home. They should have lost to Arizona State, who is arguably the worst team in the Pac-12. And then Oregon moves up 2 spots, which is good to see. There's been a lot of conversation, Oregon versus Texas. I think Oregon has looked better than Texas this year. And when you don't have like head-to-head matchups or conference versus conference or, interconference matchups, you're looking at eye tests. And for me, Oregon, I agree with this. Oregon has looked better than Texas overall. I like how the AP does. They do recognize this head-to-head right here and this head-to-head right here. Texas is above Alabama. Looking at some games here, Oregon's got to be careful against Cal. We saw how Cal gave USC a run for their money. And Kansas State and Texas. Kansas State is very much in the Big 12 title contention as well. I believe they made it into the top 25. Yes, they make it into the top 25. And they'll play at Texas. Let's see, so far. And then Penn State actually moves up a spot. So they put Oklahoma down to number 10. They don't respect the head-to-head with Oklahoma and Texas. I just put that there because I don't want to completely overreact to that loss. It was a 1-score loss against Kansas. It was at Kansas. Yes, they should have won, but Kansas is a pretty good team. I don't think people should totally overreact to this Oklahoma loss. Now, Oklahoma has to be on an upset watch again because they're going to Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State could win that. The Cowboys could play an upset, their usual kind of upset play against Oklahoma. So Oklahoma runs out the top 10. Ole Miss at number 11. Okay, you're looking at 1-loss teams. Oregon's probably the best 1-loss team around. So yeah. Then this is interesting. They really like AP really likes Notre Dame and LSU above Missouri and Louisville. For me, I would put those guys above these two, just because they straight up haven't lost as much, at least, and definitely Missouri has a chance to vault into the top 10 if they can somehow beat Georgia, and then also LSU. At Alabama. Man, again, so many great games to look out for. LSU and Alabama, this will be a classic matchup. Alabama's got everything in front of them. They don't have a conference loss. They're still very much playoff hopes. LSU, I think they're on the fringe with playoff hopes. So if they can beat Bama, they can launch in the top 10. If Missouri beats Georgia, they can launch in the top 10. Oregon State, they lose to Arizona in Arizona. It was a classic upset game in the desert, midnight. No, barely anyone's watching. I was watching up until I think like halftime or third quarter. I just went to bed. I was like, it was a close game throughout. And Oregon State, they do a random trick play at the end of the half. Instead of just taking the 3 points, they do a fake field goal. They're basically out like 20, 30 yards from the end zone. This is the last play of the half, and they do a fake field goal, and that ultimately cost Oregon State the game. It was 27-24. It was a 3-point game. That was a horrible decision from Oregon State, and their season overall now is almost certainly over. They can play upset against a team like Washington and a team like Oregon, but their Pac-12 title hopes are super slim now because of that. And Arizona, shout-outs to them. They're the best 3-loss team in the country. You could even make an argument that they should be ranked maybe even instead of USC or something. Let's see where they were on kind of the fringe, it looks like. They got 6 votes, it looks like. Oklahoma State, 6-2. North Carolina should not be ranked. Liberty should be ranked. Fresno State should be ranked after their win against UNLV. I got kind of sidetracked, so let's rewind here. So it looks like Air Force. Good win. Now they play Army, another Commanders Cup game. They're at 17. Are they the highest non-power 5? It looks like it. Yes, Air Force is. James Madison just at 23. I think they should be moved up. Utah moves down 5 spots. Oregon State moved down 5 spots. Overall, kind of an L for Pac-12. I mean, I think it was still kind of a win that Oregon beat Utah because, they were both 1 loss, but I think the country had a little more respect on Oregon, obviously, than Utah. But definitely the Oregon State loss hurts for the Pac-12. Then we got Tennessee. UCLA is just sticking there. If Arizona can beat UCLA, I think you definitely got to put Arizona in the top 25. With another top 25 win, for sure. Launch them into fringe top 15 even. Let's see, Tulane. Kansas, it looks like they stay exactly where they were. I maybe would have moved Kansas above your UCLAs and maybe your Tennessees, maybe even your Utahs, maybe, because that was just such a good win for Kansas. Maybe biggest win in program history, honestly. Big upset. And then USC stays at number 24. I don't think they should be in the top 25. Over, like, you look at the past few weeks here, this past month of October, they have been very bad. That defense has been horrible. And Caleb Williams is just fighting to keep them alive. And then Kansas State moves in the top 25. So overall, I would put Fresno State, Liberty, and maybe Oklahoma State instead of USC, UCLA is kind of yeah. There are only a few spots, only so many spots to fill up, obviously. So overall, it will be interesting to see. I want to go. It will be interesting to see the the college football playoff ranking. I think that drops Tuesday, either Monday or Tuesday. I'll have to check. To me, I think the college football playoff committee will rank Ohio State above Michigan. They should, but we will see. It will be interesting to see where they rank Georgia, because obviously you look over here, Georgia is still number one. They always have been. Interesting to see where they rank Washington and Oregon. Like, this top 10 will be really interesting to see where they view this top 10, because you look at, you can really arrange this top 5, top 4 any way you want. You can really arrange this area any way you want. So it'll be interesting to see what the committee values. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys all for watching and listening. I'm going to try to put this over on Spotify. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I think the replay should save on YouTube and all.